welcome. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'll be reflecting back on my 2:48 marathon that I ran just over 2 weeks ago now. It's a 10-minute PB for me, and I'd love to just take this time to go over the good, the bad and the ugly from that day and just that week building up to the race. I'd also like to touch in this video on what is coming up next for me, basically. And yeah, just a hint, I'll give more information away near the end of the video. But yeah, my next challenge isn't too far away, so stay tuned to hear about that. But before we jump into today's video, before we jump into the good, the bad and the ugly, I just want to address a comment or a question that I got on my previous video, which in short said that this person will be approaching a marathon, it may be an ultra. Anyway, they're going to be approaching a long distance running event very soon. They're going to be solo, so without a support crew, and they're interested in how they can prepare to meet their nutrition needs out on course, their hydration needs, and I guess how logistically would I recommend facilitating this. So I haven't run any ultra marathons, but I will tell you from my own experience running marathons that I particularly find it useful to rehearse as much of this as possible in training. Sounds obvious, but can be easily missed, and honestly, personally myself, I have actually forgotten to do too much of this myself, even though I know just how bloody important it is. But personally, I like to use Morton gels. This just works for me. I know I have to be a little bit careful with what I put in my body, and some of those more fruitier gels don't really work so well for me. So I like to stick with Morton gels, practice them throughout the training for this marathon. I did a 16-week training plan. There was about 4 blocks in there of sort of varying workouts. Some weeks I had hills, some weeks I had more speed work, but all in all I always had a long run during those weeks to practice my gel consumption and my hydration. Now, I did a little bit of shopping around for, I guess, the kind of gear that I'd need for the big day, and I was really close to buying a pair of Soar marathon shorts. So Soar is a London-based company. They make fantastic clothes. I don't actually own any myself, but I've just seen so many start lines, even here in Australia, just so many people wearing Soar, and the stuff looks really great quality. But the price point personally has always put me off, as I'm sure it has for a lot of you guys. And I was doing a bit of shopping around, I actually found a pair of shorts by a company called BOA, and they've got this short called the Alpaca Elite, which I actually got at a really discounted price here in Australia. I think I got them for about £40, maybe like $65, $70 here. And they've got like 8 gel pockets on them, which is just phenomenal, really. I'm sort of probably an average height and weight runner. I ran my most recent marathon at about 70 kilograms, and I'm 5'11", and based on my training, based on my intensity that I was running, I knew that I'd need to consume about 6 25-gram carbohydrate gels for the marathon. So 6 gels in a pair of shorts, they can carry 8 gels. It was really nice to have this option of sort of strategically placing gels around my shorts, around the waistband of my shorts where the pockets are, to sort of make sure that I wasn't running lopsided, so like having all of my gels on one side, for example. And just a quick tip, if you are using these shorts, the BOA shorts, I'm not sure how the pockets on the Soar shorts are, but there's like, starting from the front, there's essentially like 4 pockets on each side. So I actually found that, like the caffeine gels that I was taking at the end of the race, I planned to have like 1 on the left, 1 on the right, so that like if I just worked clockwise, essentially, I knew that my essentially right side of my body would be really light, my right side of my shorts, my left side would be really heavy, and there'd be more chance for them to actually just like slip off on the left side. So I did sort of alternate putting them into my shorts on the marathon morning, so that I know I wouldn't be running into this issue. But yeah, I planned to take 6 gels at the Port Fairy Marathon 2 weeks ago, but I packed 7 just in case. So I did actually take a couple of caffeine gels near the end of the race, but I took those roughly every 20 minutes or so. And that morning I had taken on a Morton solid bar just to really try and top off all of those carbohydrate stores in the body. And hydration wise, I used a Bix hydration. I was really grateful and really quite pleased to have had Bix sponsor the training series. So they were actually providing electrolyte and daily recovery tablets to me. And they were fantastic. I have to say, I really loved all the flavors. I believe I had cherry, grapefruit, there was a grape flavor, and probably missing one. I'll put that on screen, but they were all delicious. Really enjoyed them all. And they just sat really well. So on race day, the marathons I've done here in Australia, all of them have had the opportunity to use special bottles in the race. So I was actually able to pre-mix my bottles and then drop them off at the start. Now, because I'm running smaller marathons here in Australia, by smaller I mean like non-major marathons, they give you this ability to drop off the special bottles, but I know that in the big city marathons, maybe the larger events, you don't really have this option unless you're in the elite or maybe even the sub-elite field sometimes. But just something to bear in mind. I think in future, maybe in the majors, if I was to do them and not get that elite entry, then I may strategically ask people out on course to actually hold them. Obviously, you'd need a bit of a support crew for this. So answering the question here, like you're without a support crew, I think then comes kind of the possibility of actually carrying a soft flask with you on course. Now, it might not sound like a fantastic idea, but I know the Welsh runner did it in his recent marathon PB. I believe that was in Valencia. I'll link to the video, it's fantastic. But I believe the Welsh runner actually ran with a Salomon soft flask in his Soar racing shorts. So yeah, I mean, that is definitely a possibility if you want to carry electrolytes with you. But I will say that I think I really loved having the Bix out on course. So I had those at like, I think 10, 20, 30 and about 37. I knew that the last sort of 7 or 8k was going to be hard, and I was actually just really looking forward to getting a drink in just to kind of have a refresher, just that sort of mental refresh after taking on all those gels, running all those Ks. Just got this nice drink waiting for me, and it actually really did the job. But do I think this is necessary? Probably not. And I think what I really enjoyed about having my own drinks was that I could pick the flavour, that I knew what was coming up, I knew how much liquid was in the bottle, and I used sort of, we call them pop tops here in Australia, but they were just sort of like caps that you could bite and then quite easily squirt the mix into my mouth. But say if I had picked up like a cup of electrolytes, then there's the opportunity to spill it down you, and it's usually sticky and it's just not quite as nice. You don't really know what flavour you're getting either. But I would say that pretty much, well, every race is really going to offer you electrolytes. I'd be surprised if there wasn't electrolytes out on course. If there is aid stations on a race, there usually is water and electrolytes. But I would say if you don't have the option of either having special bottles or a support crew, and you don't want to carry that soft flask, then I think there is the opportunity to just learn what products there will be out on course. It might be Gatorade or Powerade, High Five, something like that, and just practice with that in training. And chances are, if you drink enough of it whilst you're running, your gut will get used to it. It's not a guarantee, but definitely something to keep in mind. And at least at that point, then you can kind of be rest assured that there's probably going to be this electrolyte drink at almost every aid station, and you're going to be somewhat okay if you can make it to the aid station and grab a cup successfully, because that can be a bit of a challenge. So I do hope that that gives you a bit more clarity logistically on, I guess, how you can prepare for these things, but kind of segues nicely into my good, the bad and the ugly of the Port Fairy Marathon 2023. So as I mentioned, I ran a 2:48. My previous PB before this was a 2:58, and I'd only had, all in all, about 4.5 months of solid training. In fact, only 4.5 months had passed since my last marathon, and I'd pretty much started training as soon as my legs had come good from my previous marathon. And it was really quite an intensive training plan. I made a whole training series called the Port Fairy Ferry, which I'll link to. You can check that out if you're interested in more of the nitty-gritty of the weekly workouts and, you know, the ever-increasing volume and intensity and how I felt that went. But it was all a fantastic success in the end. Having, you know, found that 10 minutes, it's just unbelievable, really. even now, 2 weeks on. And I've given myself a bit of time to make this video because, well, firstly, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do next, and that was something that I just wanted to spend a bit of time contemplating and not really having too much pressure to, you know, really make this video or to come to any sort of solid conclusions. But having taken these 2 weeks and to really think about how I felt that race went, not just on paper, but mentally, what would I like to do next? What am I inspired to do? And actually, how do I think I can improve how that race went, and actually what can I do differently in the next one? So I think, talking about those logistics, carrying the gels, I think to segue into, I guess, kind of like the ugly category of this, I guess, recap, I think one of the things that stands out the most from my Port Fairy experience was the sheer lack of race experience that I had going into the race. So I had, to give you context, I lived in a rural part of Australia during my whole time on this training plan. I was actually working for my visa to stay here in Australia, and I was living in a part of Australia where there isn't actually any races that happen there. I believe the nearest race was about 60 kilometers away, and that was still considered somewhat local, but it was just still a little bit too far for me to actually go and attend. But there wasn't a whole lot going on, and I think going into Port Fairy, I'd put so much of an emphasis on training for this specific event, which of course was the case, but ultimately if you run a marathon, you take a week or two off after, maybe even take a month. Realistically, you're not losing that much fitness after taking that time off, so it's not as if like all is lost if it doesn't go well on the day. I'm generalizing there, but you know, that is the case. And I was very aware that if Port Fairy, for whatever reason, you know, I wasn't satisfied with the result, I knew that I could execute another marathon quite confidently not long after. But I will say that turning up on that start line, I did feel like so much emphasis had gone onto the race, and I'd love to have run a half marathon in the build up. I'd love to have run a 10k sort of time trial race, just to sort of get that, I guess, those juices flowing of being in a race and being able to handle that adrenaline, and just running with other people would have been really fantastic. But you know, I can't say that this affected my time on race day at all, because you know what, when that gun went off in Port Fairy and we got running at about 7 AM, I was absolutely wired. It could have easily been like 3 in the afternoon and just, you know, great music playing, being at a festival. I was just absolutely wired, having the time of my life, and running just with those other people for the first half marathon or so was fantastic. And I ran the second half pretty much on my own. As you guys will know, if you watched my recap video, which I'll link to above, the full recap is about 40 minutes long. So if you're not interested in all the, I guess, grueling details, stay watching this one. This is going to be a shorter summary, but that is definitely something to consider my next build up. So I will say that before my next marathon attempt, I've actually got a couple of half marathons coming up that I will announce in a future video, but they're not that far away. So my first one will actually be in May of this year. So I'm recording this early March. I believe the Vaporfly 3 is coming out tomorrow. So yeah, some really exciting times in the running world. Emil Corres actually just broke the British and European 10-mile record a couple of days ago. So yeah, feeling very, very inspired to get out running. But yeah, not long now until that next half marathon race, and the marathon that I'll be targeting, or at least the first marathon that I'll be targeting this year, my second, will be in August. So that's a nice little clue for you guys. I won't announce anything just yet, but that will be, as I say, good few months away from now. So yeah, training for that very soon. But if we consider how, I guess, the good, you know, can be summarized in short, the good, the bad and the ugly from the Port Fairy Marathon, the execution for me is something that I'm incredibly proud of. So I went through the first half in the Port Fairy Marathon in the high 125s, Now, I don't have an exact split of the halfway point that I ran through the half marathon. I wasn't provided one on the day as a chip time, and my Strava and my sort of like watch info on the Chorus app is kind of skewed. I'm not really sure of an exact figure, but I know I went through in the high 125s, which was bang on plan. It was actually just a little bit on the far side, but I knew that to bring it in under 250, which is my goal, I knew that I'd have to get a negative split, which funnily enough I've never pulled off in a marathon before this one. I've run pretty even splits, but mostly I'd run, you know, quite noticeable positive splits in the past. So just simply my second half would be slightly slower than my first half. So approaching this negative split, I did feel confident. I have to say that I'd built up so much confidence and strength throughout training, and I knew that I had the negative split in me if things had gone well, if the nutrition sat well, if I was able to take on that hydration, if I had a nice pack to run with, if the stars had aligned, essentially. And I'm really pleased to say that they did. And I actually closed my second half of the race in what I believe to be the low 123s. So that put me in nicely in finishing in a time of 2:48.14. Honestly, now doing the mental math, it must actually be the late 122s that I ran the second half in, which is actually pretty nuts considering my PB in the half marathon is a 120 high. So to think that I run the second half of this marathon only about 90 seconds slower than my half marathon PB is pretty crazy. And actually I find that really exciting going into these half marathon races that I mentioned, my first being in May, to just try and figure out how I'm going to run it. How can I approach that based on how easy that second half of this marathon felt? So that is definitely a fantastic part of this marathon experience. As I say, the execution, I have my coach to thank for this. Tony did a fantastic job, not only in all the training, but just giving me some guidance before the big day on sort of an execution plan. And the plan actually was to run the first 16k, so the first 10 miles, slightly slower than goal marathon pace. So I was aiming for my average pace for the entire run to be 3:59 per k to about 4 minutes per k. So not a whole lot of margin for error, but I knew that I had it in me. As I say, if the stars aligned, I knew that I had that pace in me. But Tony recommended that I went out quite conservatively in the first 10 miles, first 16k, and ran at about a 4:05 to a 4 minute k. And Tony said, if you go out first, go out hard in the first k, a little bit too quick, if you run a 3:55, it's not the end of the world. This is to be expected when you've got that adrenaline, when there's that group, rhythm of just like the gun going off, getting your heads down. It's always exciting, but I was able to hold back. I let a big group go in front of me, and my first kilometre was a 4:04. And then pretty much for those first 16 kilometres, I was just ticking off those sort of 4:04s, 4:03s. Had a couple of 4 minute Ks in there, but not too many, because I knew that as that distance hit that 16k, now was my time to go up a gear. So my next 16k at this point, my next 10 miles, Tony instructed me to aim between a 4 minute K and a 3:55. And this is a pace that I know I can run comfortably, I can keep the cadence high, and I can just tick off those Ks quite nicely any given day, really. But on marathon day, of course, you've got to know that this is something to be done with an air of caution, because you up the pace too early, and believe me, by 32, 33, 34 Ks, you're going to be feeling it. God forbid you have that death walk at 38k because you've just gone out just a bit too hard. You haven't got your strategy quite right. And that's something that I was eagerly wanting to avoid in Port Fairy, bringing that strong finish exactly as I envisioned. So as we went through 16k up to the pace through the halfway point, approaching the mid 20ks, and then eventually to 32k, that second 16 kilometer block was done. And At that point, Tony had instructed me for the last 10k, the last 6 miles of the race, to just full send basically. So 32k till 42.2, there's just 10k left. That is the time to get your head down and start aiming for those low 350 kilometers. So while I was making these changes between the gears, as I say, started off that first 16 at about 4:05, second 16 at 4 minutes, and then that last 10k head down, let's go for it. As I was switching through those gears, I was paying a really good attention on how my form was feeling, how was my breathing, was there anywhere in my body that felt a little bit tight, was it my shoulders, for example? I'd just give my arms a little shake out, get my head down, lock into that rhythm. And I think that was a really nice way of, I guess, easing the mind into the challenge, almost living in the mile that I was in. Of course, I measure in kilometers, so it was quite nice as I was running along to just be thinking about which mile I'm in. Bit of mental math, I always feel like that's quite a nice distraction. Probably not for everyone, to be honest. You could drive yourself crazy doing it, but I really felt like that was quite easy on the mind, just ticking off those Ks. And as I got to that last 10k point, I was on my own, but I verbally out loud said to myself, last 10k, let's do it. And I put my head down and I really just tried to pick up my knees, pick up that cadence and start ticking off those faster Ks. Now 32 Ks into a marathon, you're never really going to feel 100%, and definitely didn't on the day. It was hard, it was tough, and to be honest, this is kind of a little bit of the ugly segment, but I guess just on the bad side, I just at this point didn't have the confidence, and this is a huge thing that I would love to address going into the next marathon. I think it will come from doing more races, having that race experience, getting to know myself as an athlete, but I just didn't have the confidence to get my head down and start executing. I really, at like 33, 34k, was just a bit scared. I was scared of putting in like a quick 350k and then just blowing up, cramping. But cramping isn't something that I've experienced in marathons ever, or in any race for that matter, but I was scared of cramping, I was scared of being sick. It was just all these like things in my head, these anxieties, I guess this paranoia that was coming from the exertion, and it didn't need to be there because inevitably things turned out fine. I ended up finishing with so much energy, even though my 42nd kilometer was literally like a 3:44k. I just put my head down, went for it. That is pretty much a threshold for me, and I felt easy. And to come across that finish line smiling, I just felt great. Honestly, I didn't feel like I'd overexerted. I feel like I had loads left in the tank, and I feel like that is a massive confidence boost going into the next marathon. So I guess there's just a little bit of a mental note to take away there, that actually I need to have confidence not only in my training but in my execution. Tony has spent hours working with me, setting me workouts, setting me fitness tests, writing this execution plan for me, and I should have been able to trust that actually, yeah, Tony knows what he's doing. He's not pulling these numbers out of nowhere. I can trust it and I can execute. So next time around, that is something that I'll definitely be aiming for. So I think now is a good time to sort of address future goals, future plans in this video. So starting off with the marathon, I would love to knock off, at this moment in time, I'm going to say just a few minutes. So I'd love to go under the 2:45 for the marathon. Now I know that, you know, as you start chipping away at times, obviously those gains aren't going to be as big as that gain I just did. That 10-minute, like knocking off 10 minutes is pretty crazy for your marathon PB. Even if you're a 4-hour marathoner and you're going for 350, like that's a big chunk of time. But I think now that I'm in those, obviously sub 3-hour category, it's like definitely feels okay, these gains are going to come, they will, but I need to be patient. They're probably going to come a little bit slower now, and now is the time to just really focus on, of course, enjoying the process, seeing the bigger picture here, and just giving myself just that air of comfort, knowing I'm 25 years old, I've got years to do this, there's no rush, I'm just going to enjoy it. So far it's been a fantastic journey. I'm a year in, I've run 4 marathons and it's just been so much fun. So I'd love to go sub 2:45, that'd be fantastic. So as I say, that is going to be in August. I'll be announcing the exact marathon nearer the date, but between now and then I would love to PB in the half marathon. So my current PB is 80 minutes and 50 seconds, I believe. So in May I would love to beat that. I think a time that would be a little bit more representative of my fitness. I think I would love to go around 76 minutes. So that's going to put me at an average of about 3:38 per K. And I believe that's about 550 mile, I might be wrong, but yeah, I really think that's where I'd be at the moment if I run a half marathon. Probably not today, I'm a little bit achy, but in a week or so. And yeah, I mean, my current marathon time, how good that pace felt, I really feel like I've got a nice 10K in the bag, but I don't have any 10K races in the plan, but it's a distance that I'd love to do. And finally, for the 5K, that is my next race that I'll be running. So this Saturday, I'll be running the On Running Bolt race here in Victor Harbor, South Australia. So it's a local race to me. I'm living just down the road from Victor Harbor now, so sort of felt rude not to participate, or to partake at least. But I have entered into the elite field, and I did actually message the race organizer beforehand to say, listen, I can't find any sort of guide online of your elite times, you know, so qualifying time, should I be in the fun run that's also happening that day? You know, what's the deal? And they came back to me and basically said, we'd love to have you. There's no qualifying time, just come along. So I'm going to be running my first elite start, which is really exciting. Not sure it really counts, but you know, still the novelty is there for me. So I'm absolutely going to gobble it all up and enjoy the limelight. But I know that the guys that won it last year ran like mid-13s, so I don't think I'm going to be anywhere near the front of the pack. But that's not why I'm there. I'm there to enjoy it, and I've never raced a 5K before. I've done a few park runs, of course they're not races, but I'm just really interested in just doing a really good solid 5K effort. So that is coming up this Saturday, and I do have hopes of PBing my current PB unofficially. It's a 16:44. My official PB is 17:14, and that was way back, well, 18 months ago, I think, in a park run in the UK. So it'd be nice to beat that as an official PB. By that I mean, you know, certified on a measured course and all that. So yeah, that'll be really exciting. And actually I'm doing, I guess, kind of a guess my time over on Instagram. So if you are an Instagram user, just go on over to my account at scottfreerunning, also links below. You'll find the post with the, I guess I'm calling it a giveaway, but like a pride giveaway, because there's no real prize. It's just for the sheer fun of, yeah, guessing along and seeing what happens. So yeah, that will be fun. Just to make it easier, I will link the post down below so you can go straight over there and find it. So yeah, I'd love to hear your predictions for my 5K race down below. And I think that just about wraps up today's video. As always, I love to engage with you guys in the comments. If you have any questions about anything running related or not, just leave them down below, and I'd love to engage, or maybe even include them in future videos for all to hear. But that is all. Thank you all dearly for watching, and no doubt I'll be seeing you all in the next one. So the next one probably will be a recap of next Saturday's race, and not sure how much of that I'll be filming because it's only 5Ks, not a, I guess, place to get a load of footage and to engage with you guys of how it's going. I'm sure it's pretty much going to be hell from the start, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Between now and then I am going to try and nab myself a pair of the Vaporfly 3, which will be really exciting to review and talk about on the channel, but we'll see if that happens or not. I don't really know. But anyway, that is all for today. See you all soon.